If your fitness clients aren't getting results, it's alarming, right? You know that a session or two, or even a week or two of a plateau is normal, but it gets hard to come up with the answers about why it might be true to calm your clients. Unless, of course, you start to second guess them. Are they cheating? Are they overestimating exercise they're doing outside of sessions, or underestimating caloric intake? But none of these is the most likely reason your female fitness clients aren't getting results if you're working with midlife female fitness clients. Look, there's the easy stuff that you can teach that anybody is teaching today, say about losing inflammatory foods. But the easy and the obvious answer isn't so obvious to many trainers. So here you go. These 3 reasons have 2 things in common. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to the newly named She Means Fitness Business podcast, formerly known as Fitness Marketing Mastery. And prior to that, it was the Voice for Fitness Professionals podcast. So, yep, I've been doing this thing for a minute, almost 10 years now. And between the 2 podcasts that I've got, this one and the one for women in menopause, I've got nearly 2 million downloads, and kudos from AARP as top podcasts for over 50s, and a lot of great guests run through these halls right here. So if you're not used to tuning in and you're a health and fitness coach, especially if you're a female in midlife yourself and working with them, this is the place to be. Your marketing, your sales skills, unfortunately, will limit or release you to the success that you want. I'm Deborah Atkinson, and I've been doing this for now 38 years. This is 2022. And it was about right now that 40 years ago, I had no idea I would be here. I'm about to celebrate. Is that what you do? I don't know. Congregate for my 40th high school class reunion. And at that point, I was going to be a graphic designer. It wasn't until 2 years later that I officially changed my major to physical education. Then was the name of the department. Now it's kinesiology. And that's where, after I finished my undergrad and grad work, I went on to teach and was invited to stay for 15 years. But here's the deal. What I noticed, whether it's in hiring and training trainers and fitness instructors, or teaching at the university level, we often lose the good ones. And so I've made it my mission to make sure that we arm those of you with the education and the credentials and the heart to serve people with the marketing and the sales skills that don't come naturally to most of us. It's very rare, in fact, that someone comes into this from a sales or a marketing background and doing the marketing is easy. I certainly didn't, but for some reason, it was easy for me. Maybe it was the graphic design. Maybe it was being used to, figuring out how to brand something, use color, use words, use font, use images. And that just fell into how do you use the right words for communication? Because speaking was also very easy to me. If it's not for you, that does not mean you cannot be successful. Let me give you this science content today, and later we can talk a little bit about how you apply it and how you have a greater reach and greater success. So these 3 reasons have 2 things in common. First of all, they're hormones. The second thing, all 3 of these things I'm about to give you have in common is they require adequate quality and quantity of sleep. So in order for these things not to backfire on your female fitness clients, they need sleep. If you don't know how to sequentially coach your clients on the solutions to better sleep, then I suggest you download my quick and dirty freebie. And I will link to that in the show notes today. Show notes will be at fitnessmarketingmastery.com/female fitness clients. All right, let's dive in. I want to give you all of this. Number one, cortisol. Yep, if cortisol is high, or honestly, if it's low, there's either too much muscle breakdown or too little energy, and the body and the metabolism are slowing down everything. Not a good place to be. Muscle breakdown and fat storage both occur far faster in the presence of high cortisol than do lean muscle gains and fat burning. That's a problem, right? When even one night of sleep deprivation occurs, and we're talking maybe 2 hours, that's easy to happen. Sleep deprivation sets in, cortisol levels the next day work against your client's goals. Number 2 is growth hormone. So this hormone is key to growing lean muscle. The right strength training stimulus, and you're probably providing that if you're listening to this, you provide that to your client. It's one way to boost growth hormone. In fact, it's one of the best. But did you know growth hormone is released during the deepest cycles of sleep? So even though during the day to day, you stimulated with your client that ability to produce more growth hormone by giving them a great workout, if they don't get a good night's sleep tonight, they're SOL, right? So it's going to suffer. And think about this. A woman who is having hot flashes or night sweats, or she has an old dog, which I find very common among midlife women. It's like they got dogs when they were in their 30s or when their kids were little. And now kids have gone off to college and have a life. The family is left with the aging dog who is snoring or epileptic or whatever. And that is just one thing. You know, women, I find they can move to a different bedroom than a snoring partner. And yet they can't do that with their pets. So it becomes a real limiter. So much that on Flipping 50, on that podcast, I hosted a holistic vet to talk about how do we get our pets to sleep so that my clients can sleep. So if you are suffering from this, by the way, you can go and listen to, thankfully I had this, I had the issue of an aging dog, but sleep was never an issue for him. He was a good sleeper even right to the end. But you get the idea. I mean, if she's waking because of her own hot flashes or night sweats, potentially, if she's got an old dog or she's got a snoring spouse, her sleep is going to suffer. She's waking up multiple times. She's never allowed to get into that deep sleep cycle where cortisol is optimized, right? And growth hormone is released. And there's one more we'll talk about here. Other women that I've worked with have insomnia for years. And you know what happens to them? They just accept it. And they say things like, oh, well, that's a good night's sleep for me. And when they sleep for 4 hours straight, that's it. That's a good night for me, she'll say. Or they don't wake until 4, even though they don't need to wake up until hours later. So you can be a key turning point in them changing the story they tell themselves about, I don't sleep. I've never slept. I met Jennifer when she was in her early 60s. She had had insomnia for decades, and we tried everything with some degree of success. We got her to change her sleep habits, her bedtime, her wake time, and what she was having for dinner. We got her to look at her supplements, when she was taking them, all things that progressively in the freebie I'm offering you, that I will share, and you will be able to sequentially take your clients through. But finally I said, look, I don't think you're going to make much more progress. You couldn't work harder. You're very compliant. But I don't think without sleep, you've got the right hormones present in order to get the progress you deserve. So I said, let's go check with your doctor to see what would be the smallest viable sleep supplement with the least side effects possible. And with the help of that sleep aid she got, she changed her sleep habit because it was like all of a sudden she was like, I didn't know I could feel this way. She's like, this is amazing, right? Her whole life changed. But then she began to get confidence that she could go to sleep maybe on her own and sleep that well. And she did. But she had to have that training wheel first. And not everybody maybe can do that. Somebody might be reliant on it. But if it helps them sleep, it will help them have the hormones that they need. She did change her sleep habits some more. Her relationship with bedtime changed because if you're not familiar with this, an insomniac dreads bedtime because they know it's just this roller coaster of frustration. They'll avoid it. They'll try to stay up and make themselves stay awake because they think if they get exhausted enough, they surely will sleep. And often that's not true either. But she lost, get this, 100 pounds after we got her sleeping. And now she's using a Fitbit. We've got this feedback that she's sleeping. She's getting scores that are even in the high 80s and 90s. She's gotten a couple scores like that. That was never happening. And she's sleeping, 6 to 8 hours regularly, solidly through the night. And that's huge. And she's got boundaries on her sleep. She gets angry with herself if there's happens to be a night where she falls asleep in her chair because she knows that won't bode well if she goes to bed. But it's never too late. So I want you to lock that away and use it if you need to. Number 3, the third reason is testosterone. If you've got women in midlife who are still drinking wine regularly and saying they want more energy and they want to lose weight, that sugar's not going to help them. It's also going to disrupt their sleep if they're skimping on protein. If they're doing tons of cardio, they're killing their testosterone. So not only are they not producing as much because, again, that's produced in deeper cycles of sleep, other ways of optimizing testosterone are doing the opposite things that they might be doing to sabotage it. So instead of doing endurance training, they kick that to the curb and they introduce high intensity interval training, short bouts, not more, which she's going to be inclined to do, right? Because she's used to endurance. She can't stretch them out. More is not better. And so interval training, strength training, and again, short, hard sessions and high protein, at least higher than she's ever used to in her life. So if you're not used to saying this and you're used to quoting RDAs, what I want you to get used to quoting, if you're not a nutritionist, you're not an RD, this is still within your scope of practice, is look it up. Find the research, share the research. That's within everybody's scope of practice. Say, this is something you might want to consider. Do you want to look at this as a goal that is within your scope of practice and say, here's what reports on longevity say about muscle as an endocrine organ, as the organ of longevity, and how much we now know, and actually we have for over 20 years, for almost 24, it's been pretty prevalent in the research. It just hasn't made it to mainstream yet. Why? Because RDAs are governmental guidelines, and they are probably not going to change in our lifetime, or at least mine. I'm 58. And I'm going to live a long time, but still, they're just way too slow to change. So something very, very dramatic would have to happen. But we can be a part of the stimulus for educating clients and allowing them to choose. You can always share what I do. And, what I respond when my mother or my sister asks me a question is this. That is not you diagnosing or treating or working outside of your scope of practice. But then asking coaching questions is very appropriate for you. So Remember, testosterone, it too is created during those deep sleep cycles. So you want to find ways to optimize all three of those. That's it. 3 ways or reasons. And really one way to improve those 3 hormones that will change your relationship with your clients and improve their results dramatically. Turn your business into a coaching business as well as a training business by leveraging knowledge just like this. And if you're looking for more simple tips to help your clients get better results, it's not more exercise and it's not another workshop. It's not another certification. It's not, except it's rounding it all up in one place. Look, I taught at the university level for 15 years. I know that we get people out of there as quickly as possible because we're actually rewarded if we get them out in 4 years. If it takes longer than that, the university, if they signed a guarantee, pays a fine, right? So that's not going to bode well if we start adding more and more training. We have to give students the basics. And so if you went through a degree program and or you still have a certification, but the basics, and you haven't taken additional training on women in menopause, every phase of a woman's life demands a different exercise prescription. I'm going to put the link in the show notes to the Flipping 50 Menopause Fitness Specialist, as well as the sleep tips that you can get for your clients if you want others that progressively, consistently, and sequentially you can walk them through. There will also be, as always, a list of other episodes similar to this content that you might like to listen to. One of my favorite ways to consume content is to be moving while I'm listening. I take podcasts on hikes with me or on walks. And I find it's the best way to retain, but also to creatively have my wheels turning about how can I apply that? Which client needs to hear this? And how would I incorporate that into what I'm doing with them? So if you're the same way, then this is for you. So there you have it. That's it for today. You'll find the show notes at fitnessmarketingmastery.com/female fitness clients. And what are you waiting for? The world needs us right now more than ever.